I think I covered everything I wanted to say with that piece of smell cognition. Okay, now let's talk about this piece where they said people don't know how to connect with us. I find this is very true. For me personally, I find that I do better in one-to-one scenarios or small groups of like 3 to 5 people tops, especially when I'm just getting to know someone. Because there's this fear, there's kind of like this holding back of like, is it safe for me to be fully who I am? Because when I've done that in the past, there's this sense of rejection, and this could be amplified by like our beliefs. The more we assume or like believe or expect to be rejected, the more rejection we're going to experience. And there's also this piece of like how fully and deeply do we love and accept ourselves. You know how they always say like it always starts with us, like the inner work, that's why it's so important. The more we learn to love and accept ourselves, all of ourselves, the good, the bad, the whatever, like everything, the more we're going to start seeing this mirrored in our external environment. Back then, I can see how, like, I didn't fully love and accept myself. I was very on, like, full survival mode. As I've slowed down and I've learned to embrace my gifts and see them as gifts, human design has helped a lot in this, creating more awareness on the gifts and the shadows and all that, and how I interact with people, how people interact with me. The mechanics has really helped me understand myself more. Like, even though they say like projectors aren't here to see or like know themselves, like I think that's a load of BS. Maybe it's my undefined decenter, the individual circuitry. Like, projectors, like, don't, like, I don't know, I don't buy that. 'Cause, like, if you start forming that belief, obviously, like, it's going to be a real thing for you. Will we have our blind spots? Absolutely. I see it more as like an ongoing process that I'm always going to be learning new things about myself. And especially, like, I find this can be a little bit quicker when we work with other people, because in a way they will mirror things for us. Or we'll see how the mechanics work a little bit differently than like when we're just by ourselves and we're kind of like thinking about the past and how it's worked in the past, and we're like, okay, the past is the past, how can we start doing things differently now, based on more education, more knowing or learning about our design, and waiting for the invitation, things like that. It can really change our experience, and many times we won't be able to experiment or see that until we're interacting with people. So, where was I going with this? Hold on. Oh, people not knowing how to interact with us or how to connect with us. Part of me wants to say is that before I would kind of just, it would be like this very like giving up energy of like, well, if people don't get me, it's fine. It's not like I wanted to be around them anyways. Bitterness, right? Now, it feels more to me like opening my heart, loving and accepting who I am, learning to trust the power of my voice. For me, voice is a very big component of my chart. For you, it might be feeling, or your intuition, or you know your gut, whatever your authority is. I would say like maybe start there. And now it's more like, okay, approaching the situation with an open heart, not making all these assumptions, expectations that I had before, and also teaching people how to connect with me, which is something I had never considered before. I just kind of expected them to get it, you know. Um, and now it's more of like asking for invitations. Like, if you're not getting any invitations, like if you can think of one person, a friend, and ask them out to lunch or dinner or to a movie. Like, in a movie, you don't really have to do a lot of talking. It's just a little bit before and a little bit after, and you're just sitting next to each other, watching the movie. But like also teaching them, and it could be like a very beautiful process of like, oh, I really like it when you ask me about like what I think about this or what I think about that. And you'll find that when the people around you, like, they love you, they want to see you like light up and express yourself, and it'll be something that will be mutually empowering. And many times, like, they won't realize that until you start teaching them what that looks like and what that feels like, and then they'll feel it. Like, you'll notice the shift in the dynamic. So that's something that I'm learning to be more vocal about. Like, I really like it when you invite me, to dinner or to lunch, or, when you reach out to me, because, and then let's go back to this piece. It's like, another thing they mentioned is that people wait for us to go to them to initiate. I noticed this a lot in my interpersonal relationships. When I was learning about human design, I resonated a lot with the information for manifestors. This might be a little bit different if you don't have a lot of individual circuitry, But I find that this is where it's coming from. And also being a self-projected projector. Kip, I don't know if you guys might be familiar with him. But I love how he's shared before where like there's something he wants to do, like he doesn't always wait for an invitation, like he just goes for him, like yes, that's exactly what it feels like. And it could be a very like self-projected thing. The G center is where the magnetic monopole is, sense of direction. It kind of like, it feels sometimes like this impulse to initiate, to act. There's no waiting. Like when sometimes, like I don't know, when I heard about like waiting for an invitation, part of me went like, what the, like, what, you want me to wait? Like many times I don't wait. And for, you know, your traditional human design people, that's blasphemy. That's like, you don't say that, like you're supposed to wait for an invitation. But like, does it feel like you're supposed to wait? And if it doesn't, then go for it, see what happens, and then experiment what works better for you, initiating or waiting for the invitation. And sometimes in different scenarios, like a different thing will apply. So I say, like, learn to feel into it. Anyways, what I've noticed in my interpersonal relationships is that with friends, there is this energy of like, they're waiting for me to reach out to them. And many times, like, I'll hold myself back because I'm practicing waiting for an invitation. But many times I feel like they're okay. It's like they're waiting for me to say, I'm available this day, like, what do you want to do? Or like, let's get together and go out to the park with the kids or something like that. So if you have a lot of individual circuitry, I would encourage you to experiment with initiating a little bit more. Like, not be afraid of initiating, especially with your loved ones or people that you're a little bit more comfortable around, and see what happens. Because then, I want to say, you're going to start feeling the shift. Because in my mind, sometimes it can feel like, well, if I initiate, what if I get a no? Things like, you won't know unless you initiate, you know? And then, say, practice initiating with different people if it feels like it, okay? Tune into, like, what does it feel like? What's going on here? Okay. And then learn through experimentation. Okay, we're not going to be hard on ourselves. They're just going to be observations. And if I'm right, what you'll find is that most of the time it is correct for us to initiate. Okay? So yeah, there's that. And then I feel like, okay, I felt this more with like mom and dad, maybe because they knew me at a deeper level than like I allow other people to get to know me for protection. With certain people, I feel like there's this like long-standing invitation. These are people that I can just go up to them and say, hey, this is what I've been thinking, this is what I've been wanting to do. Are you up for it? And it'll be most of the time, yes, let's do it. So I just want to throw that out there, and mainly that piece of like not just expecting people to know how to connect with us, but being a little bit more vocal and teaching them how to connect with us. And when you're just starting out this, like I'll throw this out there as well, it doesn't always have to be like verbally, I always struggle to say that word, telling them how we want to be treated. It's more like energetically, like sit down and write down, like, how would you like people to treat you, or to initiate with you, or to invite you? How do you want that experience to look like? How do you want it to feel like? Put it down on paper and then kind of like release it with like this very light energy of like, let's see what happens. Let's see how things on my external reality shift. And you'll find that many times you won't really need to say anything. Energetically, it's already been done. Sometimes it will require us to go into like that uncomfortable territory, but it's only uncomfortable because we're not used to it. And you'll find that because we have a good intention, because we are good-hearted people, it will be mutually beneficial. Both parties will grow from this. The person in the comment section, like, I would call them by name, and I actually offered if they wanted me to plug in their Instagram info in this video, because I'm like, just in case like you guys wanted to connect with different people. I'm kind of like learning to step into like line 4 energy. I think it's so funny that in my line series, the only ones I haven't done, I think it's line 4, because I feel like I don't understand that energy very well, and that's the one that I'm learning to kind of like step into and see the value of like networking and things like that. So I offered them, and they're like, I don't know how I feel about that, let me think about it. So I'm like, okay, it's okay, we don't have to do that. I just thought, you know, I'd throw that out there. But okay, this person was saying how they have connections where everything they say is interpreted the wrong way or taken personally, and then there are other connections where speaking their mind, there's no overreaction or reaction, even if they do say strange things. it doesn't affect the connection. And this is very true. I kind of already touched on this, but let's talk about this a little bit more. I felt that with family. So in my mind, I made this really, I mean, I knew, but I also like I've gone deeper into awareness on this, where family, and for me, family is like mom, dad, very limited amount of friends that have that family vibe of like no matter what I say or do, it's never ill received, or even if it's a little bit out there, they're here for it, they encourage it. And then there's other people where I just feel like they look at me a little bit weird, of like either weird of like who do you think you are, or you can't see that, or things like that, and you'll feel it. So for me, that's just lets me know now that not to focus on the people that get offended. And here's where like I would say like the incarnation cross aspects come up, or like I would say also the pure individual stuff comes up, where like I know there will be some people that I can trigger them quite easily, but I see it more as like that's a them thing, not a me thing. It's more like calling them out on their BS. I don't always do that, because then I can very easily go into kind of, it feels like this very like push energy. But there are certain people where I feel like if they're starting to overstep, it comes out more when like I feel like they're abusing their power. And this has to do with the incarnation cross. Mine has to do with like breaking out of things or people or systems that try to control me. If there's any trace of underlying control energy, that's where I'm like, oh no, hold up. I completely transform, which I feel like is not, I mean, it kind of is very natural to me, but also I don't know, it doesn't come out often, but with certain people it does. And there will be times where I'll be very intentional about this, and I will kind of like poke at the ego or the shadow a little bit, but I don't do it with the intention of like being mean. For me, it feels more of like, let me give this person a little bit of a wake-up call. And not that it's my responsibility to give them a wake-up call, but I feel like it's for certain people where it's like, I need to draw the line. I need to, not that I need, but like I want to make sure that they know that what other people tolerate from them is not okay, and it's not okay for me, and those people might not say anything, but I will. That kind of energy, and people feel it. And no, I don't know, sometimes like I'll just like, okay Jeannie, like why are you getting yourself into trouble, like let's just stay away from them, they're allowed to have their own experience. But then other times I'm like, let's have a little bit of fun here. Let's ruffle some feathers and see what happens. But I don't do that all the time, I promise. I do refrain myself. But yeah, okay, let's keep going. So essentially with that is like, pay attention to who feels like family, or that group that feels like it doesn't matter what you say. Even if it's weird, even if it's freaky, even if it's strange, even if it's something that you blurted out that you realize, oh, I didn't mean to say that, or I could have said that differently, and focus on those people, because where your energy goes, how's it go? Like where your attention goes, energy flows. And before I focused so much like on the other people that were seeing me as freak and having all these projections and judgments and criticisms about me, and it was just a waste of energy, and there's so much bitterness. So learn to focus on the people who love and accept you, and you'll start to see how by doing that you're going to start attracting and being a vibrational match for more people like that, as opposed to this group over here. We get to say thank you, bye. Okay. Another thing that this person mentioned is that sometimes it's best to keep their insights inside, not sharing until asked. Sometimes people are not really ready to hear what we have to say. And for this, I used to feel really bitter on this and sad, more like sad, like, oh, this is such a beautiful insight, and I can't share it with this group in particular. But now what I do is like, I take it with me, and I don't stop myself from sharing. I just don't share it with that group. And for me, that looks like posting on social media, whether it's through Instagram or creating a video about it. So I'm still sharing my insight, but it's not necessarily with that group. It's like my insight is there. I'm sharing it because I think it's beautiful. I don't want to keep that to myself. I'm putting it out there, and I'm trusting that whoever that insight is meant for, they will find it. So that's kind of like a small tweak that, I wanted to share in case you felt like trying that, because I just feel like really sad when we're given like this beautiful insight and it's just like stuck inside of us, or just like writing it down and trusting that that little nugget is going to help somebody else in the future, even though if it doesn't end up being shared with the party that originally created that insight or that awareness. I also love how they mentioned their mom in this comment. They said like their mom tells them that they need to be patient with other people. And that's something that my mom used to tell me a lot. And I haven't looked at my mom's circuitry, but I want to say that this is more like a tribal and collective thing. And when I noticed with my mom is like she kind of felt like the bridge for me for the tribal and the collective. She was kind of the one that a buffer, so to say, and she would tell me to be more patient with people. And I'm not saying that I don't need to work on patience. Impatience is also one of my jinky shadows, so it does show up a lot for me. I thought that was cute, like having someone that can teach you how to develop those social cues or how to interact with people. But for me, like I have 61, so I think it would have been much more efficient if my mom would have added the piece of like why am I doing this, like why is it a value, why do people need this, because that way it could help me train my brain to see things differently, more from like a more tribal perspective, I guess. Another thing they mentioned was how when we have this fear of rejection, or this fear like how we say will be or what we say, how that will be perceived by others, it can really keep us from being open and bonding with others. And this is a form of playing it small, playing it safe. But I think one of the really key things that I was able to touch on that first part, more towards the end, was that by doing so, not only are we holding ourselves back, so holding the gift back. And this is where it can take some practice of undoing those assumptions and beliefs and expectations that we had based on past experiences, because this is what the brain does, right? It can take past experiences and project those onto the future, and we start creating all these rules for ourselves of like how to behave, how not to behave, in order to minimize the risk of rejection. But when we do that way too much, to the point where we're hiding, isolating, playing small, not using our voice, we're also holding back the gift, the empowerment, the leaps forward, and things like that. So it's just things to be to create more awareness around and start playing with, start seeing all the past experiences. What did we learn from them? How do we want to do things differently? How can we love and accept ourselves at a deeper level? And again, the deeper we do that, the more we do that, the more we'll see that other people will do that too. Because in a way, if we are, it's just the way it works. Like when we're not accepting ourselves fully and deeply, we'll start to see like how much people in our lives or in our world are not accepting us fully and deeply. And again, I'm not saying that the scenarios are always going to be ideal, but this is where I feel like using our voice comes in real, it can be really powerful. And initially it's going to be quite scary. Like you're going to have several times where you're probably going to feel like you're going to die. Spoiler alert, you're not going to die. But let's say you have an interaction with someone and they perceived you as a freak. I forgot what I was going to say with that. I lost my train of thought. I forgot what I was going to say. But let's just go with this example. Like, sometimes, because, like, let's say the channel of structuring goes from the ajna to the throat, right? It's structuring language. And sometimes, for me at least, I find like the thoughts are quicker, or they can be formed faster than what can be put into words. Sometimes it takes a little bit of like playing with the language or just saying stuff out loud until you find the words, or like until the words come out of you. Is what it feels like. So like this week my brother treated me to lunch, and we went to this place, and it was a wing place, and I wanted to order this flavor in particular. And the waitress warned me. She's like, this is really spicy, like, are you sure that's what you want? And I'm like, how spicy? Because like I'm Mexican. And at that moment I realized, okay, maybe I could have said it a little bit better, but that's what came out. But what I meant to say was like, I'm Mexican, I'm used to eating spicy, I can handle spicy. So maybe a more ideal thing would have been like, I can handle spicy quite well, like how spicy is this? Not bring in the Mexican piece. But in a way, that was a part of me. Like, I don't think she got offended, but I could feel my brother kind of like fuming a little bit of like, because I don't know what, it was like an Asian place. I don't know what nationality the waitress was, but I could already feel my brother kind of feeling like, oh my god, like what is she gonna say? He's also the one that kind of made this comment of like when we were talking about like where in the world he would ever like to go. Japan was a really like one of the top things on his list, and he's like, but I would be afraid of taking you there because of what you might say. Like you're gonna offend so many people. So with him, I feel more of like there isn't as much of like a fully accepting vibe as like for example with my parents and my teams. Like I feel like when I did say something like totally random and something that might seem insensitive, even though I didn't mean it as insensitive, or I didn't mean to be insensitive, for my parents like it would be funny. And with my brother it's like that's not funny, like don't say that to people because it's not nice. You know, but it's not that I mean like my intention is to not be nice. It's just I don't know, sometimes I feel like maybe this is one of those times where I should just stop while I'm ahead. I'm just gonna stop here for now. Okay, let's keep going. Oh my gosh, this is gonna be such a long video, y'all. This is the last chunk of a comment that they left, which I really love because it's a very powerful reframe. They said, while listening, this interesting thought popped out that maybe those who have this channel 4323 are normal as we are. The genius or freak only depends on who we are sharing and how they are in tune or on the same page as us. And I love how they worded this because this is essentially what it feels like. For me, like I feel normal. And we're going to talk about like perception and projections and all that, which we've kind of already touched on, but I feel like this is going to be a slightly different perspective. It's like I feel normal. Because these are my thoughts, right? This is how my brain thinks. This is how I express myself, things like that. So I feel like the common denominator in like both of these scenarios, whether you're perceived as a genius or as a freak, we're always the common denominator, right? We're normal. But the way we're perceived is what changes. And it's more of like it's not our responsibility to monitor how we are perceived. Like that has nothing to do with us. It's more of a them thing. And this can give us information about the people we're interacting with, about the environment we're in. If we're noticing that the reaction or the energy is leaning more towards like being perceived as a freak, just know that it's a perception. And we can't control people's perception. The part of us that wants to control how we're being perceived is a part that wants to be loved and accepted no matter what. And that love and acceptance starts with us. The more fully we can love and accept ourselves, regardless of whether we're seen as a freak or as a genius, that's the most important part, because we're the ones that go home with ourselves. At the end of the day, can you go to bed and be fully at peace with yourself? I think that's one of the biggest blessings and things to look out for. Again, because we can't control other people's perception of us. That's not our responsibility. The next thing they mentioned is one of the original things that I really wanted to talk about in that first part, and it just didn't come out. So I love that they came to this piece from listening to the content. They say, and if you've been in the incorrect environment with incorrect people around you for most of your life, you've felt like a freak or an outsider. They say they're starting to see it this way because when I'm with the right people, I don't think what or how they're going to perceive me. But when they don't feel safe, it's like they want to go inside their body with certain groups of people. And then they can seem very freaky or antisocial, but they know that they're not. They think that the genius or freak depends on the people they're around. And this is very true. Again, it's about learning to teach ourselves to see things differently, because I find this channel is very, very strong in me. I'm starting to create much more awareness around how much this channel plays out in my life. And they're absolutely right. Like I've mentioned before, like I used to focus more on the people that weren't accepting me and like wanting to prove myself and wanting, to change either how they saw me or kind of like adapt to them more than like having them adapt to me. And we go back to like this taking way too much responsibility for things and teaching people how we want to be treated, like what's okay, what's not okay. Not always tailoring or adapting to other people, because in a way, like, that's easy. Like, I can do that because I know how to read people. Like, I know what they want, and I can do that. I've been doing that for a lot of my life, but that leaves you really bitter. Like, in my case, it left me really bitter, because then it was like, well, what about me? Like, why aren't people adapting to me? And if I can adapt to them, why can't they adapt to me? So, here you play a little bit with your experience and see, like, what feels better. Because I don't believe, like, let's say in the people who have seen me as a freak, there are some things that I feel like I could definitely have tweaked, and the experience would have been different. And then there are other people where, like, the tweaks, even though I can see what to tweak, it's not, I'm like, it's not worth it. So it's more like tuning into, like, why do I want to tweak it? And then feeling into, like, am I honoring myself in the process, or am I just trying to people please? So for me, the way I feel like it played out is that social interactions, I was surrounding myself with the incorrect people, incorrect environments. So that's why I felt like a freak or an outsider, just like they said. And with, like, family, that's where I felt safer, because I was being I felt more loved, more accepted, and things like that. And it's about learning to feel safe in both environments, which is the thing, the piece that I feel like I was missing before. And this has to do with, like, nervous system regulation, working on beliefs that we could have formed based on past experiences, things like that. Now I feel like the shift I'm moving into, or like, yeah, I feel the nudge. It has a lot to do with this channel, like embracing more the power of my voice. And I've noticed that the more I started doing this, there's been more opportunities for me to share what it is that I want to share. Like, everything that I've been holding back, by releasing that, waiting for the invitation, looking for the pause the timing, looking for the pause for the right timing to say what it is that I want to say, I've noticed how mutually beneficial this has been for me and for the people in my life. And I noticed this mainly in my RCP mentoring pod this week. Yesterday, I think, was it yesterday? I think we had our pod. And even though I feel like I didn't share a lot this time compared to, like, the last two times, it was so interesting to me how many times my name came up. There were several times where people would say, oh, it's like Jeannie said, or like when she said the last time she suggested this and I tried it and then this happened. Like, my name came up a lot, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, and cool in the sense, not that my name was being thrown out there, but just like how much shifted, as I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface of really unleashing and trusting the power of my voice. And okay, let me throw this in here because it's just kind of dropped in, that I've pondered before, but I don't really think I've shared before. What I've noticed with this channel in particular, and we've talked about this during this video, is like perception. People's perception of us will vary. So when we're in a group dynamic, some people will perceive us as like, oh my gosh, that's so empowering and so insightful. There could be a group of people that will perceive us as like, oh my gosh, how dare she say that? Like, what was she thinking? All these judgments and criticisms or whatever. And then, we have other people that's like, oh my gosh, that's empowering and wisdom and, insights and all this beautiful stuff that, is really nice to hear. But we can't control that, right? And let's say that we're in an environment where it seems like the majority of the people are perceiving us as a freak, that what we're saying doesn't make sense, that we're crazy, we're being rude, we're being too outspoken, whatever, okay? What I've noticed is that in those group dynamics, there is a small percentage of people. It could just be one person. It could be two, depending on how big the group is, but in comparison to the whole, there is a very small portion of the group that will resonate with what you have to say. And for me, it feels more of like being in this group of people where, because, okay, this is another thing this channel has. I wanted to do a separate video on this, but I feel like part of this is going to tie in very well to this, so I'm just going to plug in a little bit of this and then I'll go deeper in a different one. Part of this channel, what it does is it's really good at seeing what could be done better. And many times when this isn't invited, it can seem as like, oh, we're only looking at the flaws. But the thing is, like, we have to look at the flaws in order to see what could be improved. And it'll be more efficient. It'll save time, energy, and resources. It's not the first time I've said this. But let's say for me, it feels like many times I'm noticing things that people might have some awareness around, but they haven't quite found the words to it. Kind of like what happened, like with this comment that this person posted on the first part. They're like, oh, you found the words to things that I was thinking or experiencing, but I just hadn't found the way to express it. It kind of feels that same energy, but with other things. And many times it's like systems or like people who are being too controlling or too demanding. Like, what I've noticed is that people will take that because they see this person as like an authority figure or someone to be respected, and they might see as like, oh, I'm being disrespectful if I say something against them. And it's not really against them. To me, it feels more like, hey, you're overstepping, and that's not okay, right? But if everybody's afraid to say something, nothing really changes. So let's take that example where I felt the urge or the need to say something, more of the like watch yourself, because what you're doing, like the way you're treating me or other people, I see it, and that's not okay. Like, they deserve to be loved and accepted. Sometimes the person will be like, oh my, it'll be like a shock to them in a good way of like, I hadn't realized, I'm sorry, I didn't know you felt that way. Other times they'll be like, you know what, you're overstepping, I'm an authority figure. It can play either way. But the thing is, like, in that group, like if there's someone that's watching me or like they witness me saying something, they don't always say it. I don't always realize that I have said something that they needed to hear. Like, for example, with these comments that were left on my first video, many times, like, when I take a look at, I don't do this very often because I don't believe that like the statistics on the videos or like on Instagram posts really give you a bigger picture of what's going on. Because like one post could have like very small amount of likes, but there's one person that will reach out and say, you know what, this is exactly what I needed to hear. That line, the way you put it, like it really hit deep. And I'm like, this post could have had 1,000 likes on it, or like another post could have had 1,000 likes on it, which like I'm nowhere near close to 1,000 likes. But the thing is, like, even though this other post might have gotten like 5 likes, I got to see that it really hit home for this person, and it helped them grow or shift something that really is going to change the trajectory of their life. Like, no longer will they be able to do things the same way. So I feel like that's something that can happen in these group dynamics. Maybe the people that are being offended are more vocal than the people that are being empowered, right? And the amount of people that are being empowered might be one. Like, if it's a group of 100, one person is the one that you just completely changed their life. Maybe they didn't have the courage to say that or to share that with you. So that's what I mean. Like, by holding back our voice, we're not only holding ourselves back, but we're holding humanity back. And the big thing about like individual circuitry is like, we're here, we are the ones that help humanity move forward. And there's going to be resistance to that. I think resistance can be minimized by working on our beliefs and learning to fine-tune our communication skills and things like that. Like, there's a whole nother conversation that we can have, but never underestimate the power of your voice or the gift of this channel. And just be aware that the impact you can have on others might not be to a huge scale, because we're individuals, right? We're focused on the individual, and it's going to take time for our insights and our mutation to ripple through into the collective, or into the tribe, and then the collective. It's going to take time. Patience, unfortunately, is a very real thing in this scenario. Last thing they mentioned is that they perceive me as courageous for opening up and speaking about these experiences, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you. It does definitely help me see how, again, going deeper into this channel, and it's also a process of like working through the fear. I was also going to do a different video on this, but it's like, when we're doing things that are so normal to us, it's going to take us doing things differently to see what comes to the surface. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap it up here. This one definitely feels a lot fuller. A lot of things got expressed. I think it's a good time to stop because I feel under my voice is starting to get a little bit raspy. So I'm going to pause here for now. If you guys have any comments or insights or takeaways, again, feel free to drop them in the comment section. This is just one example of what leaving comments can do, like what type of content, like what it pulls out of me. I find like when I'm able to get a little bit more information from people, it'll pull something different out of me, and it's just a beautiful process. So I invite you to leave a comment down below, or if you want to take anything of this and put it into practice and then come back and tell us what happened. I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, You can find me on Instagram. My handle is @JeannieSalcedo. There on my website, you can find more information of different ways of working with me. That's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.